January 1945. Across a frozen field in eastern France, more than 250 German soldiers were advancing behind armored tank destroyers. Their objective was simple: break through the American line and destroy the small group of soldiers defending the forest. But there was one problem. Standing between them and victory was one man, a 19-year-old lieutenant. Outnumbered, outgunned, and standing on top of a burning tank destroyer. For nearly an hour, he held off the entire assault. This is the incredible true story of Audie Murphy, the most decorated American soldier of World War II. By early 1945, Audie Murphy had already earned a reputation among American troops. But he didn't look like a war hero. Murphy was born in rural Texas in 1925, growing up in a poor farming family. He was small, thin, and barely over 5 feet 4 inches tall. When he enlisted in the U.S. Army in 1942, he was only 17 years old. During training, fellow soldiers gave him a nickname, Baby, because of his small size and boyish appearance. But what Murphy lacked in physical presence, he made up for in courage. He quickly proved himself as a sharpshooter and a fearless soldier. Within months of entering combat in North Africa in 1943, his commanders noticed something unusual about him. Murphy had an instinct for battle. He reacted faster than most soldiers and was never afraid to move toward danger. During the invasion of Sicily, he helped lead attacks on German positions. At Salerno, in Italy, he single-handedly charged and destroyed a machine gun nest that had pinned down his platoon. Later, at Anzio, he knocked out a German tank and helped repel another enemy attack. Promotion followed promotion. Private, corporal, sergeant, and eventually a battlefield officer. But every promotion came with a price. Murphy was wounded multiple times during the war. At one point, a sniper shot him in the hip, and he developed gangrene. He spent months in the hospital recovering. Most soldiers would have stayed there, but Murphy didn't. He checked himself out and returned to the front. By January 1945, he was only 19 years old and now a second lieutenant commanding Company B of the 15th Infantry Regiment. Soon he would face the battle that would make him a legend. At this stage of the war, Nazi Germany was collapsing. Allied forces had pushed the German army out of most of France, but one stronghold still remained, an area in eastern France known as the Colmar Pocket. The Germans were desperate to hold this position. If they lost it, Allied forces would soon reach the Rhine River and the borders of Germany itself. So German commanders launched fierce counterattacks to push the Americans back. By late January 1945, Murphy and his men were positioned near the village of Holzwihr. The situation was already bad. Company B had started with more than 100 soldiers, but after days of heavy fighting, only around 40 men remained. The ground was frozen solid, making it nearly impossible to dig defensive positions. Most American reinforcements were nearly a mile behind them. They were exposed, and Murphy knew it. So he ordered his men to prepare a second defensive line deeper in the forest in case they needed to retreat. That decision would soon save their lives. At around 2 in the afternoon, Murphy heard the sound of engines coming from the village. Moments later, shapes began emerging from the mist. German armored vehicles. 6 powerful Jagdpanther tank destroyers. Behind them came something even worse. Infantry. Nearly 250 German soldiers, camouflaged in white winter uniforms, advancing across the snow. Murphy immediately realized his company couldn't stop that force. So he made a decision. He ordered his men to withdraw into the forest while he stayed behind to direct artillery fire using a field telephone. Then disaster struck. One of the American tank destroyers was hit by enemy fire and burst into flames. The crew abandoned it as smoke poured into the sky. The second tank destroyer tried to retreat, but it slid into a ditch and became stuck. Company B was now completely alone, and the German attack was closing in. As his men retreated into the forest, Murphy remained at the edge of the battlefield, calmly directing artillery strikes onto the advancing German troops. German tanks fired repeatedly at his position. Shells exploded around him. Machine gun fire tore through the trees. But Murphy stayed. Eventually, German tanks passed within 50 yards of his command post, yet he continued giving artillery coordinates. Only when his ammunition ran out did he move. Murphy ran back to the burning American tank destroyer. It was an incredibly dangerous place to be. The vehicle was filled with ammunition and could explode at any moment. But Murphy saw something else mounted on top of the vehicle, a .50 caliber machine gun, and he made a decision that stunned everyone watching. Murphy climbed onto the burning tank destroyer, completely exposed, with German soldiers advancing just 100 yards away. Then he opened fire. From his position atop the burning vehicle, Murphy unleashed a storm of .50 caliber rounds. German infantry began dropping across the snowy field, while others dove for cover. At the same time, Murphy continued directing American artillery strikes using the field telephone. Tank shells slammed into the vehicle beneath him. Machine gun bullets snapped through the air around him. Still, he refused to move. At one point, German soldiers crept close enough to launch an assault on his position. Murphy spotted them just in time. From less than 10 yards away, he cut down an entire squad attempting to rush him. The Germans kept advancing. At one point, Murphy called artillery onto a location so close that the operator asked how near the enemy really was. Murphy replied, "Just hold the phone, and I'll let you talk to one of them." Then he gave coordinates for artillery to fire almost directly on his own position. Shrapnel exploded around the tank destroyer as American artillery rained down. Even then, Murphy kept firing. Despite being wounded and losing blood from his leg, he refused to stop. For more than an hour, one man held off an entire German assault. Eventually, the German troops began to falter. They could not advance through the wall of machine gun fire, and they could not push deeper into the forest. The attack collapsed. When Murphy finally fired his last round, he climbed down from the burning tank destroyer. Only minutes later, the vehicle's ammunition exploded. If he had stayed any longer, it would have killed him. But Murphy wasn't finished yet. Despite his injuries, he returned to Company B, reorganized the remaining soldiers, and then led them in a counterattack. Together, they drove the Germans back into the woods. The attack had been stopped, and Company B had survived. In the days following the battle, reports of Murphy's actions spread rapidly through the army. Commanders were stunned. One soldier had held off hundreds of enemy troops. Murphy was awarded the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration in the United States, and would eventually become the most decorated American soldier of World War II. After the war, Murphy returned to the United States a national hero. He later became a Hollywood actor, starring in dozens of films, including a 1955 movie about his own life called To Hell and Back. Yet behind the fame, Murphy struggled with the memories of war. Like many veterans, he suffered from severe PTSD, and the experiences of combat haunted him for the rest of his life. Even so, he spent years supporting fellow veterans and speaking openly about the struggles soldiers faced after returning home. On May 28, 1971, tragedy struck. Murphy was killed in a plane crash at the age of just 45. He was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery.
Even in death, Murphy remained humble. Although Medal of Honor recipients are allowed gold lettering on their gravestones, Murphy requested something simpler. He wanted his grave to look like that of any ordinary soldier, because in his mind, that's all he ever was, an ordinary soldier who, on one frozen day in France, did something truly extraordinary.